Okay, so it's November 24th, 2018, a couple days after the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to do a little bit more testing on this 1948 Silvertone. Now there's something interesting that a ham radio friend of mine brought up to me that I wasn't thinking about in restoring any of these vintage sets from, say, the early 50s or in the 40s. His line voltage of years ago was 110. I have 120 volts line voltage, and so any vintage sets, if you're running the original transformers on 120 volts, it's going to be running 10 volts hotter, and all of the circuits, of course, will be running at a slightly higher voltage. But in this case, that doesn't apply because of the Hammond transformer that was put in is designed to run on 120 volts. So what I'm going to do, down below I have another resistor. I have a 50 ohm and a 100 ohm. If the last video I did on the part 8, the 100 ohm didn't drop the voltage enough. So I'm going to do the first test with no resistance in and see how high I got to get the voltage to get it up to 280 volts B+. So let's do that now. We'll bring it up a little bit. Hopefully I won't have fireworks. We're over 100 volts, and I'm hardly up to 40 volts on the 188.9. So 200. We got to get to 280. According to the schematic, that's where it's supposed to run at, to B+. There's 280, and I'm only putting about 83 volts into it. And for some reason I have, oh, there we go. I can hardly see the filaments because they're so dim, but see, I've got deflection. Let me turn this off. So you can see I have deflection, I have raster, but of course, now let's bring the voltage dropped a little bit. Let's bring her up to 280. It's going to change as the set warms up. So we're at 280, and I'm just under 90 volts in. And I have raster. So there's 280 at probably about 88 volts in. So I'll put the 100 ohm resistor in and see how far I can get up with line voltage to get it up to 280. So here we go again. I've got 100 ohms, 25 watts in line in the B+. Let's bring her up. We'll bring it up to 200 volts, 240. Let's just let it sit there for a while. I'm going to put another battery in my battery-eating Sony camera here. It loves batteries. 260. And there. Here is 280. There we go, 280. Okay, I'm over 90 volts. I'm 94 volts. Somehow I have a feeling I'm going to end up having to have 200 ohms on that dropping resistor at least. There we got raster. Let me turn the light out. We got a brighter raster. And I'm right at 280 volts. Brighter raster. And just a little over 90 volts on there. So now let's try 150 ohms. So now I have 150 ohms in the B+ line. Now let's see how high I get with that. With the line voltage. 230. We'll let it kind of heat up there. Now let's bring her up to... There we are. Now, okay, well, we got raster again. I have raster. I've got raster on the screen, 277 volts, but I've only raised the line voltage up to 95 volts. So obviously it's going to take more than 150 ohms to drop that. So let's see what I can do. I can put 200 in series and see what 200 does. Looks like I got full raster this time though at 280 volts with higher line voltage. That's because the filaments are actually, let's see, I don't remember which one of these is the bright. Yeah, there, it's not blowing up so far. 280 volts, 95 in. So let's see what we can do, what I can do if I can get this. I don't think 200 ohms is even going to do it. So, okay, now I've got 200 ohms in the B plus line. Let's see what this does. Let's bring her up to, there we are, 280. As this thing warms up, it'll drop. Oh, there's 280, and I'm still just a little over about 96 volts. So obviously this resistance is going to have to be a whole lot higher than 200 ohms to drop it sufficiently. So I have to see what I can dig up for resistors. I have another, I could put another 50 ohm in series with it, but oh boy, I'm kind of wondering. I have to see what I can dig up for resistors. I don't think I have anything on hand here. I do have raster there, but you got to get the line voltage up higher. The tube filaments are not heating up enough at 95 volts. So this is the last test I can do with the resistors I have on hand today. I've got a full 200 ohms in series now with the B+. And I don't even think that's going to be enough resistance. So let's just see what we get. We'll bring her up. Right up to 280. That's going to drop as this warms up. As the circuits start coming on. There's 280. We have raster, 280, and we're right at 100 volts. So 200 ohms is not enough. 200 ohms is not enough, so let's see what I can figure out. This will probably be a part 10 video when I get some more resistors and can play around with this a little bit more, but we're almost right at 100 volts. I would say I don't think that meter is all super accurate, but 108 or 280 as the B plus is supposed to be on the schematic. 100 volts in. I have raster. That's about it for now. Hopefully I'll get better results when I get some more resistors in. Just for the heck of it, I found this 1000 ohm, big 1000 ohm resistor. We'll just see what this does, just for kicks, because it's all I have. I tried to see if I had any other big power resistors. I'm thinking probably 500 ohms might be about right for this, but I should try to calculate this out. But let's just see what 1000 ohms does. Bring her up. $280 we want to get. There's 280. There you go. Well, for some reason, I don't seem to have raster on the screen now. I don't know what the heck went different. Something's not right. Power this down. Okay, so this is going to be tricky. With the resistor in the circuit, if I bring it up to 280 volts B+, I don't get any picture. I don't get any raster. There's no picture on this thing, but I don't get any raster. Which means that when the filaments are up to par, something changes, and I don't get anything. Right now, I'm running it at, well, let me get it down to 280. There's 280 B+, and I'm just under 90 volts. 90, about 88 volts line to get it to 280, and then I have raster. But now if I put this big 1000 ohm resistors in series, I can get the line voltage up higher, which makes the filaments hotter, and then the picture goes away. This thing is a challenge. I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to beat me. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to ever get this set really working right. Well, let me put the resistor back in and see what happens. So here I have it at 280 volts B+, where it's supposed to be. No raster. I have the resistor in series, and I managed to get the line voltage up to a little over 110 volts, which means that the filaments are all cooking pretty good. So, you know, with my test tube, I guess the next step is to see if I've got any high voltage on it. Let me shut it off and let me get ready. I'll test to see if I've got high voltage. Okay, so what's happening is, for some reason, when I get the filament voltages up higher, I'm losing my high voltage. That's what's wrong. And that's strange. Wonder why. Wonder what that could be. If I get the filament voltages down lower, let me see if no. I think I'm going to take the resistor out again and just see what kind of high voltage I get with that resistor out of the circuit. The filaments get brighter. Something is shutting down. Wonder what. Get the resistor out of the circuit so the filaments are not going to light quite so bright. Okay, there I got raster, and wait a minute, I think this meter's no good. Maybe it's not the high voltage. I'm getting more confused. Well, anyways, I don't think my high voltage meter is working right. I'm mystified. Anyways, in conclusion, what happens is when I got the resistor in and I got the line voltage higher and the tubes are brighter, I don't have any high voltage. My high voltage probe is bad, but I also determined with the short test that there is no high voltage. So that's something I'm going to have to figure out how to fix. Something must not like full voltage in on the filaments. Take the resistor out where the filaments don't get so bright when I get it up to 280, and then I get a raster. I get plenty of high voltage. Figure that one out. I don't know. I have a feeling it's got to be the horizontal circuit shutting down. I'll have to look into that.